Tony, what are you here for? The marijuana rezoning?
No,
Your property?
we're still trying to save the summit.
Okay, you're good, Mr. Chairman. You're streaming and recording.
All right, great, Sharon. Thank you very much, and welcome everybody to the June 3rd, 2020 meeting of the Danbury Planning Commission. Before I call the roll, if you'll just indulge me for a second, I'll go through the housekeeping with regard to the virtual meetings. Again, as a reminder, this is the Danbury Planning Commission's being held. This meeting is being held on Zoom and is a virtual meeting. So the meeting is a virtual meeting. Members of the public, interested parties continue to have the opportunity to participate in the meeting. You can participate via Zoom. Then you can see the video and hear the audio, or you can simply call in by telephone and participate via audio only. Just a heads up, if anyone's calling in, we may have to mute you and unmute you to avoid an echo. Instructions on how to participate in the meeting appear on the City of Danbury website, and also all of the documents and materials that apply to the matters to be discussed during this meeting, including the agenda, are also available on the City of Danbury website. The instructions, I'll run through very briefly. You go to the City of Danbury homepage, you click on Government. You then click on Boards and Commissions. You then scroll down to the Planning Commission and click on that. And over to the right side of your screen, you will see Planning Commission virtual meeting agenda with attachments 6/30/20. So those are the steps to participate via Zoom. If again, if you have any questions, please call the planning office. As a reminder, this entire meeting will be posted and can be seen on the City of Danbury website. A copy of the agenda is on the website. We'll follow the agenda as per our standard practice. If prior to the meeting, any questions or comments on the agenda were submitted to Sharon Calitro via email, those comments will be read during the appropriate portion of the meeting. We're going to skip a couple of these things because we don't have a new public hearing tonight or a continuation of a public hearing, so I can sort of skip through a couple of things. I'll mention two other things briefly. All the votes tonight will be conducted via a roll call vote. And finally, I remind everybody that this technology, Zoom, is still new to us. Glitches do sometimes occur, so please be patient should that happen. Okay, that's it for the disclaimer. We'll move on to other things. We will take a roll call vote. Attendance, Mr. Urice.
Here.
Ms. Hostetter.
Here.
Mr. Kiokio.
Here.
Mr. Sylvain.
Here.
Mr. Renz is absent. Mr. Haas is absent, and Chairman Finaldi is here. Okay, we do not have to seat any alternates for tonight's meeting, and we do have a quorum. The first item on our agenda is acceptance of the minutes, May 20th, 2020. Commission members, hopefully you had a chance to receive and review those minutes, which we received via email. Unless there's any comments or corrections, I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to accept the draft minutes of May 20th, 2020 as drafted.
I'll second. Helen.
Thank you. Motion made and seconded. Did you get that, Joanne?
Yep.
Motion made and seconded to accept the minutes of the May 20th, 2020 meeting. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Are we supposed to do a roll call?
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. I screwed up.
Sorry.
The first.
Sorry, everybody.
Oh,
Nah,
I'm slipping. Okay, a yes vote is in favor of accepting the minutes. A no vote is not in favor of accepting the minutes. Mr. Urice.
yes.
Ms. Hostetter.
Yes.
Kiokio.
Yes.
Mr. Sylvain.
Yes.
And Chairman Finaldi votes yes. The minutes are accepted. Thank you for that catch, Helen. Thank you. As a reminder, our next meeting is scheduled for June 17th, 2020. If you can't make that, please let Sharon or Jennifer know. For tonight's, looking at tonight's agenda, we have no new public hearings and we have no continuations of public hearings. So we'll move right to our old business for discussion and possible action. Item 1, Juliana Lunetta, trustee, application for 2 lot re-subdivision, 1.288 acres, 41 Golden Hill Road, H11130, subdivision number 20-01. Commission members, hopefully you received via email from Jennifer a draft of a, oops, what do I got here? Hold on. The draft of a resolution of approval. Hang on. Yes. It was the draft, it was dated May 28th, 2020. Jennifer, did you want to comment on that?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Sharon, I'm going to share the resolution.
Okay, hold on. Okay,
Hold on. Does that not work? Hold on. No, that's not working, is it?
No.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Uh-oh, wait,
Straightforward.
I know. Ah, damn, sorry. Is this not working for me? Do you guys see it or no?
No.
no,
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. And I can't get my Zoom back. Geez, okay, sorry. Can you guys still see me? Because I can't. Okay,
it's probably behind something. It's behind a tab, so move your screen around a little bit. You'll see, because we see you and we hear you.
all right. So, okay, so the draft resolution's dated May 28th. This is the 2-lot subdivision on 41 Golden Hill. Again, we've got 2 lots identified as parcel 1, which is the existing single-family dwelling. Parcel 2 is the new lot, sized approximately 34,000 square feet. The conditions that I've attached to it include the standard conditions, compliance with the maps. They are the property owner is required to submit the Mylar, 3 paper copies that will be signed by the chair, and then they're required to file that on the land records. And then when they're, the engineer is required to comply with the outstanding engineering department comments dated May 19th. If you recall from the, when we closed the hearing, that was the only outstanding issue. The city engineer felt that the outstanding conditions didn't warrant keeping the hearing open. So that's a condition as well. And they're required to adequately stake the property in the limits of clearing. And that is, and any work in the right of way, which includes the sidewalk and the apron, and any pavement patches from the lateral connections for the water and sewer. So that's it, if anyone has any questions.
Mr. Chairman,
Joel, please.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the re-subdivision as per the draft resolution dated May 28th.
Perry would like to second.
There's been a motion made and seconded to approve the draft resolution of approval on the matter of the Luneta re-subdivision. Commission members, any additional questions for Jennifer at this time? Hearing none, we will take a roll call vote. I remember that time, let the record show. Okay, a yes vote is in favor of the draft resolution of approval, and no vote is not in favor of the draft resolution of approval. Mr. Urice,
Yes.
Ms. Hostetter,
Yes.
Mr. Kiokio,
Yes.
Mr. Sylvain,
Yes.
and Chairman Finaldi votes yes. The draft resolution of approval is approved. Thank you very much, Jennifer, for that.
Thank you.
Okay, moving ahead on our agenda. We have 3 referrals shown. The first one, as you can see, is the petition for BRT Sconset LLC to add section 4-4.1 to the zoning regulations. I won't read the whole thing, but as you can see, we will be discussing that one at our next meeting, which again is June 17th, 2020. So we will not be discussing that first referral this evening. The second referral, which we will be discussing, I will read that one. 8-3A referral petition for SC Ridge Owner LLC for a zone change from IL 40 to PND and approval of master plan 100 Reserve Road C16022. Zoning Commission public hearing scheduled for June 9th, 2020. This date is subject to change depending on circumstances related to COVID-19. Again, commission members distributed via email or via the city website was the petition of the applicant, SC Ridge Owner LLC, the Summit of Danbury PND Master Plan, the Summit at Danbury PND Master Plan exhibits, and also the department staff report. With that, I will turn it over to Sharon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Sharon Calitro, I'm the Director of Planning for the City of Danbury. So you have my staff report dated May 28th, 2020. We've received, the Zoning Commission has received a petition to change the official zoning map of the site located at 100 Reserve Road from IL 40 to PND and a commensurate master plan. I'm not going to run through the justification as to why the petitioner feels it should be rezoned. You have a copy of their petition, and I'm just going to avoid trying to read a long memo. The section 4H of the zoning regulations contain the P&D regulations. As many of you recall, they were adopted in 2002, had some minor changes over the course of the last 15 years, 18 years. And last year in 2019, the language was amended to provide for adaptive reuse or retrofitting of existing obsolete or underutilized commercial buildings on large sites. So from a zoning perspective, that's where the regulations are currently at. In terms of the site location and information on this site, again, it's 99.529 acres located in the IL 40 zone, identified as tax assessor lot C16022. In 2015, the predecessor in title, Garrett Danbury LLC, applied for and received a variance from the ZBA to allow it to petition for rezoning to a PND, even though it did not meet the minimum lot acreage requirement at the time, which was 100 acres. So that variance is recorded on the land records. On the site, there's a 1,267,180 square foot building with an 800,000 square foot garage with a little over 2,400 parking spaces. That building also received a variance in 77 on building height because it's close to 70 feet, and the IL 40 at no time had a 70-foot height limit. The site is located, has frontage on Mill Plain Road, which, Sawmill Road, excuse me, which is an arterial public road. Vehicular access to the structure, however, is over 2 private roadways within the reserve, and they have cross easements and rights to cross over the land of the reserve to get in both sides of that building. But the 100-acre site does, again, have access on Sawmill and frontage on Sawmill Road. The site contains several utility easements that serve the existing structure, as well as some off-site uses. It is located on the west side of Danbury in the West Side District Plan of the 2013 POCD, and is surrounded completely by other lands of the reserved, which are zoned PND and are in various stages of development in accordance with their approved master plans. On the site, there are existing wetlands and some areas of steep slopes. Those are identified on separate figures. And the site is within the Lake Kenosha Class 2 Public Water Supply Watershed Protection Zone. And it does appear it has one or more characteristics required for its designation as being environmentally sensitive. When an application comes in for a petition for rezoning, we walk through the P&D regulations and how everything applies to the site. And so that's how our staff report is set up. So in terms of the general development principles in 4H2A, the proposed overall layout appears generally consistent with the P&D principles in terms of retrofitting the existing building with a mix of complementary uses. It will contain both residential and non-residential uses per the master plan. And in addition, there's an office and warehouse facility proposed on the periphery of the site with direct connection to Sawmill Road. An office use is a permitted use in the IL 40 district and currently, and a warehouse facility is allowed in IL 40 by special exception. The residential uses being proposed would be located within the existing structure, are all identified as apartments, and are comprised of a mix of efficiencies, 1 and 2 bedroom units. There are no 3 bedroom units proposed. There's neighborhood retail and service uses also proposed on floors throughout the building, other than the ground floor, which is permitted upon zoning commission approval. And other uses in the building include, but are not limited to offices, medical offices, a conference center, a nursery school, and I called it a catering facility, but I think it's semantics. It's like a banquet event space. In terms of the development standards in 4H2B, it does meet the development standards in terms of site size. They did receive the variance, and it's under single ownership, which is required. Based on the acreage of the site, the maximum residential density is 433 dwelling units. They are not proposing any units for assisted living, congregate care, continuing care, senior housing. And if you went into the regs and read that specific section, there's a bump in density for that kind of housing, but that is not being proposed in the master plan. They are proposing 404 dwelling units. There are a couple of exhibits that reference 414, but they have confirmed, and I've shown on the table, which I'll get to in a little bit, there are the proposal is for 404 dwelling units. That does comply as well with the master plan requirements, because you have to have a minimum density of 250 units. Why? Because you want a mix of residential and non-residential uses. The maximum non-residential development would normally be capped at 433,538 square feet. However, the petitioner has requested they apply the provisions of subsection A of section 4H2B2, and those were the things that were added last year. An application of that subsection and those conditions allow a bump in the non-residential square footage to a maximum of 75% of the gross building floor area. And in this case, that amounts to just over 950,000 square feet. In the master plan, the petitioner contends there is justification to increase the non-residential square footage, and that limiting the redevelopment of the site to 0.1 FAR would basically render the building economically not viable. The conditions that are in that subsection, which are I through 8, Roman numeral I through 8, are met. In terms of the amount of common recreational facilities and open space, the regs require 33% of the site, of the gross acreage of the site, which amounts to 32.2 acres. And the figures in the master plan total approximately 43.75 acres of both usable and common open space. One of the other requirements is a usable open space calculation based on a number of units. And if you take 404 units, you multiply that by 5, the requirement of 500 square feet per unit, you get 4.6 acres of required usable open space of the total amount. So that appears to be met as well. I just asked for some clarification, which I believe the petitioner will be addressing to the zoning commission relative to the pool area, as noted in the master plan document. Community facilities, pursuant to the regs, can total no more than 10% of the gross acreage of the site. So that's close to 10 acres. While the actual and community facilities in the regulations are defined and listed. And if you look at what they're proposing, there's even though the number isn't there, there's no way they're at 10 acres of community facility uses. The master plan indicates there are 3 phases of development. Phase 1 provides for the retrofit of the existing 1.2 million square foot building with a mix of residential uses and non-residential uses. Phase 2 would be the development of 196,650 square foot warehouse and office building on the site closer to Sawmill Road. And phase 3, they're showing some additional parking east of the main building, kind of between the two, between phase 1 and phase 2. So I thought it was important when reviewing the master plan because the phases are shown on individual figures. So to kind of help put everything in perspective, I prepared a table. I attached it to its last page of the staff report, which identifies the proposed uses by square footage by floor. So everybody could see something all on one sheet of paper on what's being proposed. We've also asked for some written clarification of the uses within each category to ensure that they do comply with the uses permitted on the zoning regulations. Again, that's just a clarification of what they are proposing to do. And I understand that will be presented to the zoning commission as well. Again, the regulations allow uses that may not be specifically listed in the zoning regulations, but of similar kind and character, as long as they ask the zoning commission approves it in the master plan. And for our purposes, I would say that would really be the case for something like the office and warehouse use. That's not a specific use that's listed, but it's comparable to some of the other uses listed in that category. So they obviously are asking the zoning commission to approve that. And I'm talking about other kind of manufacturing uses and things that are listed. It's pretty similar to that, as well would be for the banquet or catering facility in the existing building. Section 4H3 of the regs requires that a master plan be submitted, and that has been submitted. You all have a copy of it with all the exhibits. In terms of just going through what's required, the petitioner and what's proposed, the petitioner contends there's no need for mitigation or modification to traffic controls or markings, nor any modifications to any direct access ways into the site. So there are no road improvements proposed in the master plan. I've given you some indication of what minor adjustments in the LOS, various locations. And the traffic study we did forward to the city traffic engineer for review. In Exhibit H of the master plan, again, is their economic analysis. And they contend that it's fiscally, the redevelopment of the site as proposed pursuant to their master plan is fiscally positive for the city. That, again, as I mentioned earlier, was based on a residential density analysis based on 414 units, so it's a little bit over the unit count. And they did a commercial, they did an assessment based on the taxes. Exhibit I of the master plan is a school children estimate. And so they're estimating between 11 and 17 school children based on an analysis. And that, again, they contend that there will be sufficient tax revenues generated to offset the costs. What I did indicate in here, and I thought it was important because we need to recognize it, while those two analyses were done in the fall of last year, we all recognize that we saw some surprising and significant increases in the school age population over the last several months of 2019. So we just asked them to revise their analysis and update it based on those numbers. I mean, that we the city, the school, the Board of Education had to do some updated enrollment projections. We as a community have to do some facility planning, which we all know about, and there's been additional spending allocations that weren't accounted for in their analysis. So I just want to be sure everything jives. In terms of section 4H4, that's the section that requires final site plans after a master plan were to be approved. That's the process. They come into the planning department, and it's an administrative review pursuant to the approved master plan. So since there's no since there's no final site plans yet submitted. There's really no further discussion on that section. 4H5 does, however, contain some specific standards in terms, then I'll just go through them rather quickly. There's a height requirement for the structure. They do have a height variance to 70 feet. New structures will have to comply in the final site plans, and we'll review that. Some additional perimeter design standards are included. We don't have, again, final site plans. So we'll look at that when that comes in. But we did ask them for some clarification again on how the perimeter would be planted and screened from view from residences across Sawmill Road, because that is part of the reserve, but those are residential buildings. The building space requirements don't really appear to apply because this is a retrofit of an existing building. The proposed warehouse, as in the concept plan, is about 360 feet from the existing building. So I don't think we really need to worry about the building spacing plans. Again, the master plan really is not specific regarding required street trees. That is something the department will look at in terms of compliance with that standard at the time when they submit for final site plan. There are no affordable housing units proposed, so that section doesn't apply. Section F on open space and environmental design standards. Again, most are applicable during the site plan review phase. Looks like they have enough open space and usable open space based on the calculations as shown, but staff would go through that at the time they submit, and may require some landscape features to be preserved as common open space and integrated into the overall design for the property. There's a requirement about property owners associations, if and when that happens, what needs to be filed. At the moment, we're not under the impression that that is the case. It may well be in the future if the residential portion is split off or the office and warehouse is split off. There may have to be a property owners association, and that would have to get recorded on the land records. Section 8 provides standards for determining required parking and allows for shared parking spaces. Again, under a regular situation as well as the retrofit scenario that we're in, we'll go through that at final site plan, but they do have a 2,400 space garage available. The P&D requirements require that the site have direct access to an arterial street, which it does because it's on Sawmill Road. We'll ensure that new streets and sidewalks meet the requirements of this subsection. There's no signage proposed yet. That would have to be determined at final site plan. The uses on the site would be served by water and sewer in accordance with that requirement. We don't see any historic or archaeologic sites on the property. I know people have talked about the building being, whether it's historic or not, it might be iconic in terms of its design, but it's certainly not historic, built in the 80s. And in terms of compliance with the Environmental Impact Commission regulations, again, the field investigations for the wetlands were done in 2018. There is a vernal pool that runs under the Algonquin gas transmission easement. Retrofitting the existing building probably won't result in any significant impacts. Again, we'll look at that, and they'll have to go through the EIC process phase by phase. But development under phase 2 would likely have some wetland impacts, so they'll take that up with the EIC when they go from concept to site plan. In terms of compliance with the plan of conservation and development, as I indicated, rezoning of the site was envisioned in the master plan to a P&D was envisioned in a master plan, and it's consistent with the goals of the West Side and the West Side District Plan, which indicated that should be the area of future development for the city, hosting new growth industries and creatively designed neighborhoods. Now, we could all, discuss what really that means, but I guess our position is if you take a big building and you're trying to create, as they are retrofitting that building with the mixed uses, including housing, that could constitute a creatively designed new neighborhood. people living and working in the same building. The petition is also considered consistent with several goals, policies, and recommendations in the POCD and the Land Development Plan section, the West Side District Plan, the Economic Development Plan, Environmental Plan section, and the Housing Plan section. I'm not going to go through those in details because it's really all it's in the report. I am going to note, however, that it is inconsistent with the land development plan map of the POCD, as you all know, and we have grappled with over the course of the years. And that plan map from 2002 was never updated in the 2013 POCD. We all recognize that. It doesn't even show, the map itself does not show the reserve as being in the PND. So we just have to take that into consideration, not just this site and this area, but other parcels throughout Danbury. And while the master plan does include the development of uses that are and will continue to be allowed in the IL-40 zone, including, as I said, the warehouse and there's some manufacture. I guess it's manufacturing. You could call it manufacturing inside the building, but in addition, office space and warehouse use, those are allowed in the IL-40. Rezoning this would result in the loss of almost 100 acres of IL-40 zone land. There are 6 criteria for approval in the regulations. I'll walk through each one at the end of the memo. The first one is whether the proposed development is consistent with the POCD and the comprehensive planning program on which it is based. And we think the commissions can reasonably find and conclude that it is. The other was, what are environmentally sensitive areas adequately protected? Again, we've noted, it's on the record, it's in the public water supply watershed zone, in the Lake Kenosha Class 2. There may be environmentally sensitive as well. And when they go through the individual processes for approval of the phases, it's likely they'll be before the EIC. Number 3, the proposed development is in substantial harmony with surrounding area. It is surrounded by a P&D zone, which is a mix of residential uses as well as commercial uses and other uses. So it does sit in the donut hole. Existing streets, including proposed street developments and proposed streets providing access to the site, are adequate for the anticipated traffic volumes at acceptable levels of service. I talked about that already. We do think they'll probably need to go to the Office of the State Traffic Commission for the warehouse and office facility because it's over 100,000 square feet in size. The exhibit indicated a reduction in trips based on a full build out of the 1.2 million square foot building. So, that's what they came up with in terms of the numbers, and I think was the reason for the justification why there aren't any road improvements proposed. Existing proposed public facilities are adequate to serve the proposed development. The only public facility being proposed is a police station, substation to be constructed by the petitioner on the ground floor of the existing structure. There are no other public facilities proposed in the master plan. And finally, the water and sewer are adequate to serve the proposed P&D. And again, we'll go through that detailed analysis on the uses, but the building was operating as a 1.2 million square foot office building over the course of years and had water and sewer. So we're not anticipating any issues associated with that. So again, sorry to be so lengthy, but in conclusion, to amend for the Planning Commission, you'd have to, this is an 8.3A referral on the master plan and on the rezoning and master plan. You need to consider its compatibility with the goals and recommendations of the POCD and indicate whether or not you find that there would be any negative impacts on the public health, safety, and welfare. And in closing, this is a unique building. I think we all recognize that. Whether it could ever be developed just for IL-40 uses at 1.2 million, and considering the state we're in at the moment is really questionable. And this may present an opportunity, it does present an opportunity for the redevelopment of this structure, which is I think the largest structure in the state, definitely in Danbury, to be something new and creative. So with that, I will entertain any questions. Again, I apologize for being lengthy. I just wanted to be thorough.
Thank you, Sharon. Very detailed report. Thank you very much. Any questions for Sharon at this time, committee members?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Sylvain?
I don't want to get outside of our scope here today, and I don't think I am in asking a couple of these questions regarding the goal of the POCD and the overall plan for the west side. Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm excited about this. I think it's probably the best thing that could happen to that property, and I'm very excited to see what's happening over there. But in terms of the 11 phases for development over there, I just wanted to make sure that it's not in conflict with any of those phases. I'm actually happy to hear that it's being looked at almost like a hub or center of commercial and otherwise activity for the whole area, for the reserve. And I guess I just want to make sure that that is the case, and that it's in conflict with another phase that would basically plan for a town center outside of this. And related to that, in terms of walkability and open space, I know you're waiting for more details, and I think a lot of that's going to come with the site plan. But I'm curious if the trails will connect any of the roads or any of the surrounding neighborhoods so that it can almost thrive even more as the center, as the hub for that area. And those are basically my questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman?
Sharon, please.
Okay, thanks. With respect to the first question, is it in conflict with the 11 phases? So the reserve P&D has its separate master plan. I wouldn't, it wouldn't be my opinion that's in conflict with anything. They have a development program that they're required to build out, which includes neighborhood and service retail, which actually was approved in, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, 4C, and is, I think, under development. Well, the units are under construction at the time. It's important for that P&D to have its own center as well, because they have to sort of stand on their own. I think there's the residents of the reserve will be able to utilize neighborhood and service retail and community uses in this building and vice versa. I mean, I think that's what the goal is. I'm working together, but it's not my opinion that anything would necessarily conflict with that. And nor is it, you have to find it. Well, I guess you're saying in terms of the compatibility, does it conflict? And I would say no, because there are a variety of uses over the 545 acres of the reserve, which is, many of them are not residential. But I think it all works and flows together. In terms of the question on the trails, I think, again, the intention is try to connect sidewalks, and then Jen and I have had this discussion internally about making sure people who maybe live in the reserve and work and in this have a way to get around without having to get in the car. And also the people that live there want to walk beyond. I mean, we see people walking up in the reserve all the time, every time we're there. So it would be important to connect the neighborhoods, and I think they want that as well.
Right.
I think I answered everything. Tell me if I'm, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Urice, please.
Just a question for Ms. Calitro. It seemed like this came before us in some manner, shape, and form a year or so ago. Putting the residential units into this building?
No. Because they're in an IL-40 zone. They can't do residential in an IL-40 zone.
I,
Yeah.
sorry, I just I've sworn that, we talked about it in some shape or form. I don't know.
Well, we did, I mean, there were, again, related to the reserve, there was a couple of years ago, in phase 11 of the reserve, 11, 13, I get them wrong, Jen knows. But the city did approve the reduction in the non-residential square footage on one of those parcels and putting residential units, age-restricted residential units there. So
Okay.
that may be,
Probably what I'm thinking about then.
yeah, but not for this building, no.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So far as, density goes, it would seem to me that putting one-bedroom apartments in there or condos, however they're gonna structure that, would be a heck of a lot less dense than the original purpose of the building. Is that an unfair assumption?
Well, I mean, again, they're capped at a unit count. There was concern about obviously any more than, 2-bedroom units just because of the school age potential for school age children. But I think if you read the master plan, it's like a little 500 and might be a little less than this, 35,000 square feet of the building they are going to convert to the residential uses. So, and there are some uses in the building that are just for the residents. And then there's other uses in the building that would be for the residents and for the workers who might be in the building. So they'll have their own space.
Where I was going with that was, there was talk about whether there was any improvements in the road systems and such like that, but we approved road systems way back when for this building being all commercial. This was a office
Right.
building, just a
Right.
big one, that's all.
Right.
And the density of that would be considerably more in the space that we're converting to residential. The residential apartments that have to be much less dense in a head count standpoint than.
Oh, yeah, then the office space. Yeah,
office
I agree with that.
environment. So I think any concern about road improvements is moot.
That's their position as well.
Okay.
I mean, they did provide you with the numbers to justify that, but that's the reason why I think there are no improvements.
Okay, I'm not trying to make the applicants argument for them. It's just, that's just seemed to me.
Yeah.
Intuitive to me.
There was a lot of people in that building.
Yes.
Thank you, Joel. Any other questions or comments for sure? Mr. Kiokio, go ahead.
Yes, Sharon, I was wondering if you could kind of take me through your chart there a little bit.
Sure.
Just so I understand kind of the different categories there. So I know they talked about potentially having some restaurants, grocery store, there's preschool there that might expand, those kinds of things. So where would those fit? Commercial, common area? Can you kind of tell me where those might fit into those, and then what the facility, I guess that line item looks, what would that be?
Okay,
considered?
so that is one of the reasons, and that's a great question. That is one of the reasons why I asked them to clarify this breakdown so that we could ensure that the uses that are being proposed fall into the uses that are allowed pursuant to the regulations. Because we don't have something that says common in the, right? So, but, so the lobby is, well, the lobby is the lobby. That's pretty soon. But the commercial, it would be the neighborhood and service retail uses. And again, without getting further clarification from them, which I know that they're working on. But all the other uses, there's offices in there. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Office is office, medical is medical, the garage is the garage. The common facilities are the common space is, well, the commercial is commercial. So anything commercial, neighborhood retail, anything that sells something that's a commercial, like restaurant space, the gym.
Okay, the
again,
grocery store, yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's one of the reasons I asked him that question for this very
Okay.
reason, because I get how they broke the building out, but we
Yeah.
need to be sure that And they need to do it at the zoning level, not when it gets to the site plan. This is something that has to be done in the master plan. What
Yeah.
is the commercial? Is that the neighborhood and retail service and some community facilities?
Yeah, okay.
Where's the nursery school? The
Right.
nursery school could be in the commercial, because some people could consider that commercial. And I think the common, they've defined the common, and I could go back. I mean, it may be in their master plan.
So
I just can't think of it off the top of my head.
So would we be able to, or would zoning kind of list out and limit what each category, what would be allowed in each category?
Well,
And-
we're going to say, what I've asked them to do is, again, put in the category so that we can make a determination at the zoning commission if they're compliant, that they are compliant with those 3 categories of uses. So there's residential uses, that's pretty obvious. There's,
Yeah.
hold on, I'm just gonna grab my regs. There's, and then there's 3 categories of non-residential uses. There's neighborhood retail and service uses. There's community facilities, which is the nursery. And then there's non-residential uses not serving the immediate needs of the residential development. So there is space on one of the floors for it's a lens manufacturer, and they've indicated that, I don't know the name of it off the top of my head, it's in their master plan. But I would say that would be a non-residential use not serving the immediate needs of the, and
Yeah.
if you're manufacturing eyeglass lenses, you don't necessarily, you're not a neighborhood service use.
Right.
So those kinds of, that's how I need to see the breakdown, and we would need to see that in the chart, because that's how Jen and I, we track it as they go through site plan approval. Like, yes, you
Yeah.
have X number of neighborhood retail and service business use. Say
Right.
it's 100,000 square feet. That's what
Yeah.
they approve. We're going to make sure you don't have more than that, more that there isn't a change that isn't,
Right.
that doesn't trip something to go back. We need to
Yeah.
make sure you comply, and that's how we're going to do it.
Okay, good.
Now,
Okay.
they can move if they want to, get like the neighborhood retail and service uses is a broad category, like banks are in there and barbershops and restaurants. So we may approve a final site plan that has a restaurant, but that doesn't mean they can't swap it out for a barbershop, because that's still the neighborhood and service use category. So
Yeah,
as long as
yeah.
they stay in that, we're good. But
Okay.
this is how they broke down the building, and that's why I asked specifically for them to clarify what fits into what category. I'm not concerned that it doesn't. I just don't want to be the one to figure it out. Like, they need to answer that question.
Yeah,
And they can do
okay.
that at the zoning public hearing.
Yeah, okay. All right, and then, so just our sewer treatment plant, to the extent that this is connected to it, I mean, is there sufficient, are we concerned that the plant can't handle the amount of sewage and water that would come through from this, generated by this facility, or?
No, again, their calculations are a reduction based on the full occupancy of the 1.2 million square foot building. So, and they, at the time the analysis was done for the reserve, again, and I'm just paraphrasing from what's in their documents. So this building at full occupancy was in the analysis for the reserve. And so they have numbers from the reserve. They add in this, the full occupancy of the building. They get a number, and then they estimate it based on how they're going to change the building. And their numbers are, I think it's 73,000, something like that, gallons less, because the reserve isn't using as much as they thought it was going to be. So overall, there's a net reduction. We would also verify, any improvements by phase when they, submit the site plans. I mean, we have to go through public utilities, so.
Yeah, okay.
But remember, the building in the 80s had sewer in it. And we've also done a lot of, we are in the midst as we speak, of updating our sewage treatment plant because we're required to. But we've also done a lot of work over the course as part of the reserve and other reasons along the west side for the west side sewer interceptor.
Yeah.
Over the course
Yeah, I
of-
just wanted to make sure that this didn't use up all the extra capacity that we had or would put it over. So, okay, so
Yeah.
that'll be looked at.
I'm not,
Okay,
yeah, I'm not concerned
Yeah.
about that.
Yep. Okay, and my last, I guess, is just a comment that it was mentioned and just concerned about the potential number of additional school children that this could produce. As everybody knows, the schools are overcrowded as it is, and, honestly, even 5 more students is an issue, but, so that's just a big concern of mine, but overall, I think it's a pretty good use here, so.
Thank you, Bob. Any other comments or questions for Sharon at this time?
Helen,
Let Helen go.
Oh, Helen, I can't see her, but go ahead, Helen.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to, I thought maybe asking this question might help clarify, the limits of the infrastructure as opposed to what it was built for. So I can see in the master plan that that it was originally built to house 3,000 people. So my question is, and I haven't seen anything in the master plan, might have missed it, or your department, correspondence here, that there are, what would be the maximum capacity of people in the just the main building, not necessarily the warehouse.
okay, so the fiscal analysis, which is Exhibit H, I recall they did, okay, so that analysis, again, it was a few more units. It was a little higher, but so the estimate there was 592 persons from the residential portion.
And then the offices, I mean, do we have, in other words, does it approach, we seem to be saying it doesn't approach 3,000 at all, not anywhere near it, but I guess that's the clarification.
Well, I don't have a number on, if every office were to be occupied in every space, what exactly the number would be. I mean, we do, they calculate a gallonage on acreage. We figure out trips by use, like how many trips are generated by a use versus kind of we don't go by occupancy when we do that. But again, there's half of more than 500,000 square feet of what were offices now gonna house, apartments with a lot less dense.
Yeah. Like 500 people was what you said for residences, is that right?
Yeah, they said in Appendix H592.
Okay,
So I would say, a little under 600.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Sylvain, did you have a question, please?
One other question, then I'll let us go. In terms of the details of phase 2, the warehouse and the office, would we be approving those at a later time? The reason I'm asking is I know you're looking at more details about the screening from Sawmill Road, but I think if I have it correctly, that's the residential side of the Summit building. So I'm wondering if there's going to be any screening or screening necessary between the warehouse and the residential units that be looking out on this new building.
Right, that's a good question. So the process, just so we're clear on the process, if the zoning commission approves the change of zone to the P&D, they approve that with a master plan. And in this scenario, the master plan shows an office and warehouse facility on about 30 acres on that portion of the site. When and if they come in for that phase to develop that phase, review of that site plan does not go to any commission. So as long as you maintain and you're within what the master plan has shown for that phase, that review is done administratively through the department and with our department and the other departments within the city. So you would not be looking at that, and that's how the regs are written. But we would definitely ensure, that's why I brought it up in the staff report. You can see, I said, okay, so you don't give us final site plans, but explain to us how this is gonna work visually. And I'm expecting them to answer that question at the zoning commission meeting. You know, what it looks like at the elevation, what, you know, who's looking at what. Yeah. But just to be clear, you don't get another
Okay.
chance to look at this. And that's how the regulations are written. We're written that way.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Sharon at this time? Good questions, a good discussion. I'll just make a couple of comments. I agree that this is a very interesting proposal here. I guess I don't know that we've ever seen the concept of a city within a city here in Danbury, but if this works, you know, it'll be an impressive move into the future for Danbury. I get the idea. I just get the feeling that this concept of an adaptive reuse of an existing building, which may be obsolete or underutilized, I get the feeling that's something we're going to be hearing a lot about in the near future as planning people. Things are changing. Even before the COVID epidemic or pandemic hit, you know, we were seeing the effect that e-commerce had on large retail buildings, you know, the Amazon effect, if you will. Not so much our mall here in Danbury, but a lot of large retail sat empty or underutilized. And then, of course, with the COVID pandemic, we were seeing a lot of major office buildings empty, people working from home. And it remains an open question as to the degree to which all these people are going to go back and work in an office or have some sort of hybrid arrangement where they're working from home part-time in office. So the whole idea of buildings and the size of them and what we're going to use them for is very much up in the air. And I just think this is something we're going to be hearing a lot more about as planning people. The other thing is as a practical matter, I mean, this building is about 1.3 million square feet. And if we don't approve something like this as sort of mixed use hybrid arrangement, I think the fair question is, what are we going to do with it? You know, I think there was a comment made somewhere in the report where, you know, you can't just, you know, hire a wrecking company and knock down a building that's 1.3 million square feet. It's just not feasible. It's just not practical. So we have to look for these unusual arrangements, hybrid arrangements, and I think if you know, I think it is exciting, and it's something I hope works, and I hope this is a good resolution of that building. So so thanks, Sharon, for a very detailed report, and thanks everybody for a very lively discussion. Okay, if there's no other comments, commission members, I'll entertain a motion for a positive referral.
Mr. Chairman,
You're right.
I'll make a motion that we give this project or the zoning change a positive referral.
Motion made for a positive referral. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that, Helen.
Thank you, Helen. Motion made and seconded for a positive referral. Is there any other discussion?
Yeah.
With the
With
approval.
the condition, yeah. Could you add some reasons? Yeah.
Oh,
Reasons.
It is conditions.
well,
Yeah, with the conditions.
Oh, so in other words, you're saying, just so we're clear for the record, it's consistent with the plan. It will not negatively impact the health, safety.
yeah, the six criteria for approval.
Okay.
Pages 7. Those are the reasons.
Okay.
If they're in compliance with those 6 criteria outlined in your report, I think that's a pretty good. Joel, is that okay?
Mr. Chairman, I thought we were missing some information too, so, you know, Sharon's has requested some information, some more detail. I don't know whether that would be covered in the 6 conditions or not.
You
Well,
want me to address that? So
Please.
sorry, so we're in discussion, so we can talk. So I've asked them to provide some clarification of what they submitted to the zoning commission. But you won't get that clarification under this referral. But again, it's not going to be new information. It's just kind of putting the uses in the categories that we can ensure that they meet. So I think you're pretty covered in that respect. And we'll ensure that they get it. They just, it's not the process. We get more information, then we come back to you. You know, they've asked, unless you didn't want to act and you wanted to wait, but.
I think we have enough information to take a vote. Remember, this is a referral to the zoning commission. They're the ones that have the full-blown public hearing. So, so let's move forward. We have a motion for a positive referral and a second. I will take a roll call vote again. A yes is for a positive referral, a no is not for a positive referral. Mr. Urice,
Yes.
Ms. Hostetter,
Yes,
Mr. Kyokyo,
Yes.
Mr. Sylvain,
Yes.
and Chairman Finaldi votes yes. This matter will get a positive referral to the zoning commission. Thank you very much, everybody. We're going to keep moving right to item 3 under referrals. 838 referral petition of D&B Wellness to amend sections 3C4, 5A2B, 5A5, 5B2B, 5B5 of the zoning regulations, medical marijuana dispensaries as special exception to CG20 and CA80 zones. The zoning commission public hearing for this matter is June 9th, 2020. Again, that date is subject to change depending on circumstances related to COVID-19.
Oh,
Again,
sorry.
Wow.
Wow, a lot of lightning going on. I
Us
was just going
too.
to say that.
Ooh, there it is.
Yeah. If we
Hear thunder?
get disconnected, we'll have to, pick this up
Wow.
before.
yeah, I
hopefully
hear
before-
the thunder out there too, so we'll keep things moving as best we
Yeah.
can.
Sorry.
The department staff report was distributed prior to this to this meeting. Sharon, please.
Okay, I'm gonna go fast. In 2012, the state's program was enacted. There were regulations. We did a brief moratorium. Then we enacted some regulations in 3C4 that basically allowed a dispensary, but only in basically only in a pharmacy, in a retail store that sold other prescription and non-prescription drugs. So in effect, in a pharmacy. We haven't gotten any applications since then. The amendment does not include any change to the production facilities. So since the adoption of the state regs, there have been lots of changes to the state's program. There's about 41,000 registered patients in the state. There's 17 dispensaries in the state. In Fairfield County, there are 3 with over 9,000 registered patients. To our knowledge, there hasn't been any issue with any dispensary that we're aware of from a land use perspective. In terms of the marijuana program, we did speak to staff to try to get a better understanding about whether a dispensary could actually go inside of a pharmacy. And because marijuana is still a Schedule I controlled substance, and pharmacies are licensed by the DEA, and you can't sell Schedule I controlled substances under a DEA license. In effect, pharmacies can't sell marijuana, medical marijuana. So that's kind of where we are. There have been a lot of changes since the regulations were initially enacted. The proposal is to add dispensaries to make them and allow a use permitted by special exception in the CG20 and the CA80 commercial zones. Both zones offer a broad range, as you know, of retail uses. Commercial, the CA80 is just more restricted because we want to try to minimize the traffic impact generation on that critical arterial road. We do consider pharmacies to be retail, and retail and pharmacies are allowed in both today, in both the CA80 and the CG20 zone. The proposed amendment only deals with dispensaries, doesn't propose to change the definition of anything. In terms of the requirements, there are specific use regulations for both zones, including there's reference to requiring a state license, which they would have to get. It only allows for 2 dispensaries within the city of Danbury, and that is in the section 3C4, the general regulation. So this approval, at the zoning commission level, this approval would only allow 2 in the entire city. At least one other community in Fairfield County has the same kind of restriction, which limits the number. Sorry, got a little lost here. I said, yeah, you need to get a zoning permit, and prior to a zoning permit, the facility operator would have to get a state issued license. The licensing requirements from the state are very detailed and very lengthy. So it's not just for someone to, hey, I want to just open a dispensary, and it's a small little process. It's a pretty lengthy, in-depth process at this level. There are also additional regulations in terms of the distance from sensitive uses. And we have those related to liquor stores as well. These are, again, they're similar to the other, and how you measure the distance is provided so that there's no ambiguity in its application later on. One of the requirements is that vehicular access be from an arterial or collector street. And we do think that's appropriate because we wouldn't necessarily want a dispensary in the middle of a neighborhood. The proposed amendment also numerically places the uses in the 2 zones in 5A and 5B, which is CA80 and CG20. And so those were appropriate. I did just want to mention, I guess I skipped this, and it's in the report, that the petitioner is the license holder for the dispensary on Gorilla Boulevard in Bethel, and they do intend to relocate to Danbury should this amendment be approved, and obviously they would have to come to you for a special exception, but they are the petitioner for this application. Some additional in the CG20 zone, 2 additional requirements are included. First, they wouldn't be allowed. A dispensary would not be allowed in the CG20 along Main Street. So most of Main Street is in the CBD zone, but the north end and the south end, excuse me, are in the CG20 zone. We just felt like we should keep them kind of off of Main Street in downtown. So there's a prohibition on Main Street, Route 53. Even though that might be in the CG20 zone. Also in the CG20, for which uses are permitted to be accessible by a drive-through, there's a prohibition about a dispensary, even if you could do it, but there's a prohibition of dispensing medical marijuana through a drive-through. So we just wanted to be clear in the CG20 zone that even though a restaurant, a fast food restaurant may be able to do it, this particular use would not. And then we clarified that for the CA80 zone, just in case anybody could possibly interpret, that the prohibition in the CA80 zone didn't apply. As you might recall, last year, we had that 3 years ago, probably now, we had the issue about drive-through uses and fast food and things like that. So we suggested, and they included it in here, a prohibition in the CA80 zone, just so we're clear. In terms of the plan of conservation and development, the goal of the land development plan section is to develop patterns that accommodate growth without diminishing the quality of life of the city. This includes consideration of revisions to land use regulations to address changing needs and practices. I think we all know it's 8 years since the medical marijuana program has been in existence. There are strict licensing standards that are in place. I could tell you that in the country, there's only 4, as of late last year, there's only 4 states that did not have some kind of marijuana or public cannabis access, whether it's medical or recreational or both. So the number of states that don't allow anything are in the minority, clearly in the minority. And if you found that, you know, this would be a reasonable amendment if you found that the time has come. It's been here for 8 years. You know, we as staff, we didn't see any land use problems associated with the dispensary. We recognize the problems in all practical sense of the existing regulation, which says you basically can only go in a pharmacy, but pharmacies aren't allowed to sell marijuana. So in effect, they're not going in pharmacies and they're not going anywhere. So we recognize that. I think, again, as I indicated in my conclusion, the rate, not only is the regulatory landscape changing, you know, the number of, I think just yesterday, they added more conditions for which you could get a medical marijuana card. And so I think it's a continual change. I do also want to point out this amendment does not include the provision for the sale of recreational marijuana. So were that to be approved at the state level, you would not be allowed to sell recreational marijuana in a medical marijuana dispensary in Danbury. So just to be clear about that. Again, it provides the city an option to provide a limited number of dispensaries so we won't be overrun with them. And making it a special exception allows you as a planning commission to vet it in accordance with the standard conditions of 10C4A, like you would any other special exception. So we did not have an objection to the amendment as proposed.
Thank you, Sharon. Any questions?
I apologize for speeding up. I'm just seeing a lot of lightning. I don't want to get bumped out of here, but that's fine. I
Please.
apologize.
Any questions for Sharon? Mr. Sylvain?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple comments. I obviously wasn't around on the commission when a lot of this went down, you know, in the original go in 2012. As Sharon said, a lot's changed since then. Whether, you know, it's obviously a very controversial moral issue, but I think that ship has sailed. And as Sharon said, around the country, the trend is that it's coming in one form or another. And I think we are remiss if we don't take monetary advantage of that by having a business like this in our community. And my only other question is, I know the final comment in the report was perhaps creating a definition for recreational marijuana so that we're positioned for a future law change at the state level. My recommendation personally is that we do what we can as a community to position ourselves to be ready for that. We're on a highway, we're in a border town. I don't think New York has gotten their recreational through yet. And I think the number was in Great Barrington, they did 6 million in sales in the first 2 weeks. So it's certainly something worth thinking about as our state and our community faces tough financial decisions. That's really it. And just a question in terms of that suggestion to create a definition, Sharon. That's really my only question.
Again, not part of this application. That you know, that would just be something we could start to work on.
Thank you very much, Sylvain. Mr. Urice.
Yes, play a little point and counterpoint. I interviewed the Commissioner of Consumer Affairs when this thing was first starting back, I wouldn't say 10 years ago, it wasn't that long ago, but And all of the reefer madness concerns that were thrown around the last time through, I think people have finally gotten over. Maybe not, but recreational marijuana is a whole different deal. I disagree that we should be considering anything in this review. It's particularly because of things like adjacent states who have not passed recreational marijuana. We don't want to be ready to go to sell something for somebody who's obviously coming over to buy something that would be illegal in their possession 5 miles down the road. I just don't think we want to be in that business. Massachusetts is happy with it, but I wouldn't be. I think this is a little bit long overdue for Danbury. I know there was a lot of resistance the last time it through. I didn't have a problem with it then. I don't have a problem with it now. So I'm good to go on this.
Thank you, Joel. Mr. Kyokyo, are you waving?
I wasn't, but I'm okay with this.
Anyone else want to make a comment?
I guess I will.
Sure.
Helen, the last time we considered this, one of the major stumbling blocks was the fact that the feds, are calling it a controlled substance, and it's, you get arrested for it. And I know we're 8 years down the pike now, and we're in very good company if they, for whatever reason, decide to, come down on everybody to, and I don't even think that would happen. But I guess I just want to make sure that everybody's in agreement that the city of Danbury is probably not in any, there's no risk or very little risk to the city of Danbury if we do pass this. I guess I will say there is very little risk based on the fact that there's only 4 states that aren't doing this. But I just wanted to bring it up because I think that's the remaining risk for me. But again, I think it's a small risk, so I'll go with it too.
Can I do a ditto?
Go ahead, Joel.
A ditto on Helen about the risk to Danbury. Anybody that lived in Danbury could just, drive down Stony Hill Road to Bethel and buy it there. So if it were going to be a risk to Danbury, we'd already sent it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I just, again, comment briefly that, the marijuana issue is another issue that's evolving over time and changing. And, it's sooner or later, as a comment was made earlier, the state laws and the federal laws have to reconcile. It's ridiculous to have something illegal at the federal level and legal at the state level. As was said, I'm comforted by the fact that this showed up in 2012 for the first time. State of Connecticut drafted their regulations, and virtually, I'm not aware, and nor have I read anything, where it's really caused any problems from a land use perspective. None. So that's very comforting to me as we move slowly, appropriately so. And I think our slow approach to it was a good idea. And again, no issues have come up. And again, the only other comment I would make is that this has nothing to do with recreational use of marijuana, which if that gets approved at our state level, will come back to us for a whole nother discussion. But I have no problem with the petition as submitted.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
I just have a question for Sharon. I know that in New York, you can go into a pharmacy that also sells, medical marijuana products. And I think you said the feds are the ones that say it's a controlled substance, and so therefore pharmacies can't sell it, or is it the New York State that decides whether a pharmacy can sell medical marijuana or not, regardless of what the feds say? So, I guess I'm asking which of those two it is.
As I understand it, so pharmacies get DEA licenses, and the DEA, it's still considered, as I said, a Schedule I controlled substance, and under their license, they can't sell Schedule I controlled substances.
So I guess
Pharmacies cannot. So they in effect can't And every state's different. I know nothing about New York State. I can just tell you, we went through the scenario with the medical marijuana program staff people during the course of the review of this, to say, what if you carved out a corner of a pharmacy? So let's just say you walked into a pharmacy and then you had to get into a locked door that the state would, because there are very specific requirements for medical marijuana dispensaries in the state of Connecticut. But I was just saying, hypothetically speaking, could you walk into a pharmacy and walk through the pharmacy and then go to a door and it would say medical marijuana dispensary, and you get buzzed in because they have, and they said practically that's not ever going to happen, because it would be still part of a pharmacy inside the building of a pharmacy, and the pharmacy wouldn't sell a controlled substance.
They'd
So
lose
it
it.
sounds like New York is defying, the license thing.
I don't know what their program says, but he just said to us that would be very difficult for them to obtain a license to try to carve out some like little corner of a pharmacy, like that's why I said in the staff report, practically, it can't really work.
Yeah. Okay.
Under our state's program. I can't attest to what another state.
Okay, thank you. There's some confusion around that, I guess. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
there totally is, but I could just relay what the program staff is telling us, because, yeah.
Thank you.
If there's no other comments, I will entertain a motion for a positive or negative referral. Committee members?
Let one of our younger hippie members make that one.
Barry will make a motion for a positive referral. Thank you.
I'll second it, this Bob.
Motion made and seconded, right? Hey, Joel, you admitted you saw that movie Reefer Madness. We all made a note of that, by the way.
By the way, there was two, one from the 20s and then the more recent one.
All right. Anyway, we do have a motion and a second for a positive referral. Any further discussion on that?
Again, based on the report, the
Yes.
reasons in the report.
Yes, absolutely. For the reasons contained in Sharon's report. Again, a yes is a motion to approve, give it a positive recommendation, and a no is to not give it a positive recommendation. Mr. Urice,
Yes,
Ms. Hostetter,
Yes.
Kyokyo,
Yes,
Mr. Sylvain,
Yes.
Chairman Finaldi votes yes. This matter does get a positive recommendation from planning. Thank you, everybody. Good report, Sharon, and good discussion. Okay. Since we haven't been zapped by lightning yet, we got a couple of more quick things to do and we're done. You'll see something under new business, which has shown we're going to take up the zoning commission public hearing is July 28th. That's the Sugar Hollow land development. We have nothing under correspondence, other matters, one thing for reference only. And unless I'm missing something, I think that's about it for the night. And
Yeah.
if that's the case, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
second,
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. I will take a roll call vote. A yes is to adjourn, a no is to not adjourn. Mr. Urice,
yes.
Hostetter,
Yes.
Kyokyo,
yes.
Mr. Sylvain,
Yes.
and the chairman Finaldi votes yes. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Thank you.
everyone.
Good night.